Welcome back to Required Reading. My name is Russ, and today we're starting out the first chapter of a new book. This is the novelization of Gremlins. Chapter 1. In his cage, tucked in a far corner of the Chinese man's back room, the Mogwai dozed fitfully. Soon the old man would come in, stroke him gently, speak briefly in that strange-sounding language, set him free to wander among the musty books and artifacts for a while, and then, best of all, feed him. As a Mogwai, he was nearly always ready to eat, though he had learned to control his hunger. Such was the built-in adaptability of the Mogwai. He was so adaptable that even though confined to the cage and small room, he felt no desire for freedom. In fact, his mind was his escape mechanism, a perennially active entertainment center which he could use to visit any time or place, at any time at all. His mind was not like the human mind, a perverse instrument which so often refused manipulation, but played tricks or dealt its owner doses of duplicity. The Mogwai's mind, in sharp contrast, was a constant source of pleasure to him. Mog Turman, the inventor of the Mogwai species, had seen to that. Centuries ago, on another planet, Mog Turman had set out to produce a creature that was adaptable to any climate and condition, one that could easily reproduce itself, was gentle and highly intelligent. Exactly why Mog Turman embarked on this venture is not known, except that such inventors flourished during an era of widespread experimentation in the field of species creation. An era, it should be added, that passed into disrepute following later unsuccessful attempts to introduce cross-pollination among certain species of crawling carnivores. At first, Mog Turman's experiment had been looked upon as a great success, and he was hailed as a genetic hero of 3 galaxies. The first sets of Mogwai turned out as planned, although the genetic little beast had a few drawbacks not foreseen by their creator. Their vast intelligence seemed to interfere with their ability to communicate. Mog Turman said it was because they thought so much faster than they could verbalize, and for some unaccountable reason, they were repelled by light. Discounting these deficiencies, the galactic powers ordered the Mogwai sent to every inhabitable planet in the universe, their purpose being to inspire alien beings with their peaceful spirit and intelligence, and to instruct them in the ways of living without violence and possible extinction. Among these planets selected for early Mogwai population were Kelm 6 in the Porsati range, Klimph A of the Beehive Pollux, and the third satellite of minor sun 67672, a small but fertile body called Earth by its inhabitants. Soon after these first departures, it was discovered that Mog Turman's creatures were highly unstable. To be exact, fewer than 1 in 1,000 retained the sweet disposition and charitable aims built into it by the inventor. Instead, something went wrong. Very wrong. The Mogwai himself knew of the unstable Mogwai, being well versed in the historical background of his species. He preferred not to think of the complications that had developed, but it was nearly impossible not to. It was, after all, part of his heritage. Closing his eyes as he relaxed in his cage awaiting his supper, he mused briefly on the wars, landslides, and famines that had taken place on Kelm 6, Klimph A, and even here on Earth because of his creator's miscalculations and willingness to disseminate an untested creature. Small wonder Mog Turman had been punished by having his... The Mogwai pushed the thought from his mind. True, Mog Turman had failed in the overall, but he himself was one of the successes, the 1 in 1,000 who still embodied all the good things put there by his high-minded inventor. Yet his existence, he knew, had no long-term benefits for society. Gentle as he was a distinct threat to those around him. Just a few drops of water, a morsel of food at the wrong time, and... The Mogwai made a little guttural noise, unhappy with himself for allowing such unpleasant thoughts to enter his trained mind. Why was he even considering the possibility that he might bring about some disaster or other? The Chinese man seemed to understand the rules. although the Mogwai was at a loss to explain how he knew them other than by the fact that Orientals seemed to understand the inexplicable without even trying. He kept the room dark, water-free, and fed the Mogwai well before midnight. Few strangers were admitted. The Mogwai was never subjected to journeys such as those he had been forced to endure with his previous owners, among whom were a medieval peddler and a 16th century smuggler who sold stolen gems. No doubt about it, the Chinese man was the best caretaker of them all. But why, then, was the Mogwai filled with a sense of malaise at best, of impending doom at worst? Perhaps, he mused, it was because he had had it so easy for so long. Thinking back, he wondered if he had the strength to deal once again with a new outbreak of them. What do you mean, of them? He asked himself suddenly, realizing that they and he were virtually the same, except that Mogturman's miscalculations were built into them. And built into me as well, he thought, feeling guilty. I just happened to be the one who escaped. As he had done so many times in the past, he began to wonder what had happened to the others, how long they had survived, how much trouble they had caused. No, he thought, forcing his mind to erase the coalescing picture. That's not to think about. I will take a mental tour instead, a tour of the beautiful Catalescence fire streams. He closed his eyes, and his Mogwai mind, ever obedient, began to show him the vivid colors generated by the boiling rivers of the subplanet Catalesia. It was one of the Mogwai's favorite mental images, although, when he felt a minor surge of aggression, he enjoyed watching mind battles between the armored worms of Okursian. His favorite earthly visions included the sun-darkening flights of the passenger pigeon, which he understood had ended a century before, and scenes from the San Francisco earthquake. He was curled into a ball, thoroughly enjoying the mental spectacle of the Catalesian fire streams, when the Chinese man entered. A small plate held in his thin fingers. The frail gentleman, with skin like old leather, shuffled quietly to the side of the table and stood looking down into the cage at his furry friend. On the plate was an assortment of oriental delicacies left over from Han Wu's restaurant next door. A partial egg roll, rice, broccoli, and twice-fried pork scraps. To all this the Chinese man had added a small rubber washer he had found in the handy-room closet. Aware of his master's presence, the Mogwai stirred, opened his eyes, then pounced to an expectant standing position as the food's aroma suddenly reached him. Smiling benevolently, the Chinese man opened the box from the top and reached inside to gently lift the Mogwai onto the table. He deposited him next to the plate and nodded.
"You may enjoy yourself now, my friend,"
he said softly, patting the Mogwai gently on the head and then taking a step backwards. The Mogwai looked down at the plate. Sure enough, a foreign object was there again. Yesterday it had been a piece of soft, chewy wood. The day before, a couple of foamy white chips he had seen the Chinese man take from a packing crate. Sniffing at the black rubber donut, the Mogwai analyzed it instantly and knew it would not hurt him if he ate it. He also knew it would be tasteless at best, perhaps bitter, virtually nutritionless, and very hard to chew. But the Chinese man so enjoyed seeing him chew up non-edible substances that it seemed curiously uncharitable to disappoint him. Getting the black object down would take only a minute. He could then enjoy the rest of his meal as dessert. Snapping up the washer, he pulled it inside his mouth and started to grind away, first using his back teeth as a vice to break the dry object in half. As he suspected, it was tough and tasted rather like petroleum, not his favorite flavoring agent, but the Mogwai enjoyed seeing the expression of amazement and happiness crinkle the old man's features. Less than a minute later, the washer swallowed, if not digested, he was busily and eagerly attacking the rice and egg roll. Glancing up briefly, the Mogwai saw the pleased smile lingering on the Chinese man's face and was glad he had taken the trouble to eat the washer. Humoring the old man, after all, was a small enough price to pay for the peaceful life he led.